Welcome, dear listeners, to Mr. Shadow's Stories. The clock strikes midnight and the world grows quiet. But in the darkness whispers stories. Stories that refuse to stay buried. I am Mr. Shadows, your guide through the corridors of terror, the keeper of tales that others dare not tell. Tonight, we descend into the concrete depths where fluorescent lights flicker and echo footsteps that aren't your own. We venture into parking garages, those labyrinthine structures where the living park their cars and sometimes the dead park themselves. So turn down your lights, lock your doors, and prepare yourself. These are 4 true horror stories from Parking Garage Attendants. Stories that will make you think twice before walking to your car alone. Let the shadows begin. Story 1. The Woman in the White Dress. Marcus had been working as a parking garage attendant for 3 years at Riverside Plaza in downtown Seattle. It was a 12-story structure built in the 1970s with that distinctive brutalist architecture, all concrete and shadows, with narrow spaces between pillars that seemed to swallow the light. He worked the night shift from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Most nights were uneventful. He'd sit in his booth on the ground floor, watching security monitors, occasionally helping a late-night worker find their car or dealing with someone who'd lost their ticket. The pay was decent, and Marcus appreciated the solitude. He was studying for his engineering degree, so the quiet hours gave him time to read. But everything changed one October night. It was around 2:30 in the morning. The garage was nearly empty, maybe 15 cars scattered across 12 floors. Marcus was reviewing his textbook when movement on one of the monitors caught his eye. It was the camera for level 7. A woman stood perfectly still between 2 concrete pillars. She wore a long white dress that seemed to glow under the harsh fluorescent lights. Her dark hair hung down past her shoulders, and she faced away from the camera, staring at the concrete wall. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Something about her posture, the way she stood so unnaturally still, made his skin crawl. He checked the timestamp, 2:34 a.m. What was someone doing on level 7 at this hour? He grabbed his radio and headed for the elevator, his footsteps echoing through the empty ground floor. Protocol dictated that he check on anyone behaving strangely. The garage had issues with homeless people trying to sleep in the stairwells, though they usually stayed on the lower levels where it was warmer. The elevator groaned as it climbed. Marcus watched the numbers light up. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The doors opened with a ding that sounded too loud in the silence. Level 7 was empty, or at least it appeared to be. Marcus stepped out, his flashlight cutting through the dim spaces between parked cars. There were only 3 vehicles on this floor, a Honda Civic, a pickup truck, and a BMW. He walked toward where he'd seen the woman in the camera. Nothing. He checked between the pillars, behind the cars, and even the stairwell door. She had vanished. But as he stood there, Marcus noticed something that made his blood run cold. It was freezing on level 7. Not just cool, freezing. His breath came out in visible clouds. The other levels maintained a consistent temperature year-round, maybe a bit cooler than outside, but never like this. It felt like standing inside a refrigerator. Marcus hurried back to the elevator, his heart pounding. When he returned to his booth, he immediately pulled up the footage from level 7. He rewound to 2:34 a.m. There she was, the woman in the white dress standing between the pillars. But as he watched, she slowly turned around. He leaned closer to the monitor, and what he saw made him knock over his coffee. She had no face. Where her features should have been, there was only smooth, pale skin. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, just blank emptiness. And she was staring, if you could call it that, directly at the camera. Marcus froze, watching as the figure began to glide, not walk, glide toward the camera. Her dress moved as if underwater, flowing around her in slow motion. She came closer and closer until her faceless head filled the entire frame. Then the camera went to static. When the feed returned 10 seconds later, she was gone. Marcus spent the rest of his shift with all the lights in the booth on, jumping at every sound. He checked the other monitors obsessively, terrified he'd see her on another floor, getting closer and closer to the ground level. To his relief, she didn't appear again that night. The next evening, Marcus arrived early to talk to Gerald, the day shift attendant. Gerald was in his 60s, a retired postal worker who'd been at Riverside Plaza for nearly a decade. "Gerald," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady, "has anything strange ever happened here, particularly on level 7? Gerald's friendly expression faded. He set down his newspaper and looked at Marcus seriously. "You saw her, didn't you? The woman in white?" Marcus nodded slowly. Gerald sighed and leaned back in his chair. "I was hoping it was just me. I saw her about 5 years ago, same floor, in the same white dress. I went up there to check, and she was gone, just like that. But here's the thing, Marcus. I did some research. Back in 1982, a woman named Catherine Mills threw herself from level 7, jumped right over the edge, wore a white dress to her own suicide." Marcus felt the room spin. Why level 7 specifically? Her fiancé worked in the building for the garage services. She'd found out he was cheating on her. According to the old newspaper articles, she wanted him to see her fall past his office window. Level 7 was the perfect height. Gerald paused. He did see her, quit his job the next day and left the city. The story goes that Catherine is still up there, still waiting for him to come back. Marcus requested a transfer to the day shift the next week. Management approved it without question. Apparently, the night shift had high turnover, and they didn't ask why. But before he left the night shift for good, Marcus checked the level 7 camera one last time. In the corner of the frame, barely visible in the shadows, stood a figure in a white dress. She was waving.
Story 2. The elevator that goes down.
Jennifer worked at a parking garage attached to a hospital in Philadelphia. It was a newer structure, only built in 2005, with bright lighting and a modern design that should have felt safe and clean. The garage had 8 levels above ground and 2 levels below, B1 and B2. The basement levels were reserved for hospital staff with special permits. During her training, her supervisor made one thing very clear. The elevator is programmed to only go to B1 and B2 if you scan an authorized badge. Without one, it won't even show those buttons. Don't worry about it. Jennifer worked the evening shift from 4 p.m. to midnight. It was a busy garage, with visitors coming and going, doctors and nurses rotating shifts, and emergency patients arriving at all hours. She liked the activity. It made the time pass quickly. One evening in late November, around 9 p.m., Jennifer was doing her rounds on level 4 when she heard the elevator ding. She glanced over as the doors opened. The elevator was empty, or it should have been. As Jennifer watched, the button panel inside began to light up. Not by anyone pressing them, they just illuminated one by one, starting from the top floor and working down. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. The elevator doors closed, and Jennifer heard it descend. She told herself it was just a malfunction. Old elevators, well, relatively old, sometimes had electrical issues. She made a mental note to report it to maintenance. But then it happened again the next night at the same time, 9 p.m. The elevator arrived empty, buttons lighting up in sequence, descending on their own. And again the night after that. Jennifer mentioned it to her supervisor, who seemed unconcerned. Probably just a short in the wiring. I'll have someone look at it. But on the fourth night, something changed. Jennifer was on level 2 when the elevator dinged at 9 p.m. She walked over and watched through the glass panel in the door as the buttons began their sequence. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Then B1, then B2. Jennifer's heart began to pound. That shouldn't be possible. The basement levels required badge access. There was no way the elevator should be going down there on its own. But then another button lit up, B3. Jennifer stepped back from the elevator. There was no B3. The garage only had 2 basement levels. She looked at the panel again, thinking she'd misread it, but there it was, clear as day, a button labeled B3, glowing red. The elevator began to descend. Against every instinct screaming at her to walk away, Jennifer pulled out her phone and began recording. She watched the floor indicator above the elevator doors. 2, 1, B1, B2. Then the indicator went dark. For a long moment, nothing happened. Jennifer stood alone on level 2, her phone still recording, barely breathing. Then she heard it, a sound coming from the elevator shaft, a scraping like metal on concrete, coming from deep below. It grew louder and louder, accompanied by a low moaning that sounded almost human, but not quite. The elevator began to rise. B2, B1, 1, 2. The doors opened. The elevator was still empty, but the temperature inside was at least 20 degrees colder than the garage. Jennifer could see frost forming on the metal walls, and there was a smell, something rotten and chemical, like formaldehyde mixed with decay. On the floor of the elevator, written in what looked like condensation, were 2 words: "Stay out." The doors closed, and the elevator went to level 8, where it remained for the rest of the night. Jennifer showed the video to her supervisor the next day. His face went pale as he watched. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "When they were excavating for this garage, they found something. The construction was delayed for weeks. There were rumors among the crew, but the hospital paid a lot of money to keep it quiet." "Found what?" asked Jennifer. "Bodies, at least a dozen. They'd been there a long time, maybe 100 years or more. This area used to be a potter's field, where they buried people who couldn't afford proper funerals. The hospital wanted the garage, so they relocated the remains to a cemetery across town. Or at least they claimed they relocated all of them." Jennifer felt sick. "You think they missed some?" Her supervisor shrugged. "I don't know, but I do know that 3 attendants have quit in the past 2 years, all claiming the elevators were haunted. I thought they were just spooked by working alone at night, but after seeing your video," he trailed off. "What am I supposed to do?" Jennifer asked. "Same as me. Ignore the elevator at 9 p.m. Don't go near it, and for God's sakes, if it opens on its own and shows a B3 button, don't get in." Jennifer followed his advice. Every night at 9 p.m., she made sure she was on the opposite side of the garage from the elevators. She'd hear them ding, hear them descend, but she never looked. This worked fine until a freezing night in January. Jennifer was sitting in the payment booth when a doctor approached, looking frazzled. "The elevator on level 5 is stuck. I'm late for my shift. Can you help?" It was 8:59 p.m. Jennifer grabbed her radio and headed for the stairs, climbing to level 5. Sure enough, one of the 3 elevators had its doors stuck half open, the interior lights flickering. She pressed the emergency call button, and maintenance picked up. "We can have someone there in 20 minutes. 20 minutes, the doctor protested. "I need to get to the ER. "Take one of the other elevators," Jennifer suggested, pointing to the remaining 2. The doctor walked over and pressed the call button. They both watched the indicator show one elevator rising. 3, 4, 5. The doors opened. It was empty, but all the buttons were already lit, including ones that didn't exist. B3, B4, B5. The elevator was ice cold, and that same chemical smell wafted out. Jennifer checked her watch. 9 o'clock exactly. "We'll take the stairs," she said firmly, grabbing the doctor's arm. "But it's right here," he protested. "We're taking the stairs." They hurried to the stairwell, and as the door closed behind them, Jennifer heard the elevator ding again. Through the small window in the stairwell door, she saw something that still haunts her. The elevator was descending, and through the glass panel in its door, she could see dozens of pale hands pressed against the interior walls, leaving smudged handprints on the frosted metal. Jennifer put in her 2 weeks' notice the next morning. She now works at a surface lot, open air, with no elevators, and she's never been happier.
Story 3. The car that's always there. Robert worked at a parking structure near the University of Michigan campus. It was an old garage built in the 1960s with low ceilings and poor lighting that the university kept promising to upgrade but never did. The job was easy enough. Students and faculty had monthly passes, visitors paid by the hour, and Robert's main responsibility was making sure people paid before they left. He worked alone most nights, and the isolation didn't bother him. He'd put on podcasts and scroll through his phone during the slow hours. On level 3, in the far corner by the south stairwell, there was always a car parked in space 347. Always. It was a 1987 Buick LeSabre, dark blue with Michigan plates. The paint was faded, one taillight was cracked, and a thin layer of dust covered every surface. Robert had noticed it during his first week and assumed it belonged to a faculty member who left it there long term. But as weeks turned to months, the dust got thicker and the car never moved, not once. He mentioned it to his supervisor, who shrugged. "Some people pay for monthly parking and barely use their car. Not our problem, as long as they're paid up." "How long has it been there?" Robert asked. His supervisor pulled up the records. "Looks like that spot has been registered to the same person since 2008. Paid annually, always on time. Guy named Thomas Brennan." 16 years? The same car in the same spot for 16 years? Rich professor probably, has other cars. Like I said, not our problem. But Robert couldn't let it go. There was something wrong with the car. Every time he walked past it during his rounds, he felt watched. The windows were tinted, but not so dark that you couldn't see inside during the day. Except there was never anything to see. No personal items, no trash, no parking permits hanging from the mirror, just empty seats and that pervasive layer of dust. One night, Robert decided to investigate. It was almost 2 a.m. and the garage was deserted. He grabbed his flashlight and walked up to level 3, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The Buick sat in its corner spot, exactly as always. Robert approached slowly, shining his light through the driver's side window. The interior was spotless, no dirt on the floor mats, no wear on the seats. For a car from 1987 that supposedly never moved, it looked showroom new. He tried the door handle. Locked. Robert walked around to the passenger side, then the back, all locked. He peered into the trunk through the back window, but the seats were up, blocking his view. That's when he noticed the license plate. It was current, renewed for 2024, but the registration sticker looked old and the colors faded. Robert took out his phone and snapped a photo, planning to look up the plate number later. As he lowered his phone, he saw something in the reflection on the screen. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat of the Buick. Robert spun around, his heart hammering. The car was empty. He looked back at his phone, hands shaking, and checked the photo he had just taken. In the image, clearly visible in the car's rear window, was the silhouette of a man sitting perfectly still in the driver's seat. Robert ran. He didn't stop until he reached his booth on the ground floor, gasping for breath. He locked the door, something he never did, and kept his eyes on the monitors. The camera for level 3 showed space 347. The Buick sat there, undisturbed. No one in the driver's seat, no movement. Robert forced himself to calm down. It was just a trick of the light, a reflection on his phone screen, nothing more. But when he looked at the photo again, the figure was clearer than before. He could see details now. A man in a suit, hands on the steering wheel, head tilted slightly, as if listening to something. Robert deleted the photo and tried to forget about it. He made it 3 days before curiosity got the better of him. He needed to know who Thomas Brennan was and why he kept a car parked in the same spot for 16 years. A quick Google search turned up an obituary from the Ann Arbor News, dated October 15, 2008. Thomas Brennan, 52, associate professor of English at the University of Michigan, was found deceased in his vehicle on October 14th. The cause of death was determined to be carbon monoxide poisoning, believed to be self-inflicted. Brennan had been despondent following a recent divorce. He is survived by 2 children and his former wife. Instead of flowers, the Animat asks that donations be made to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Robert felt his blood turn to ice. Thomas Brennan had killed himself in his car, in a parking garage, 16 years ago. And someone or something was still paying for that parking spot. Robert called his supervisor immediately, explaining what he'd found. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I'll look into it," his supervisor finally said. "Don't go near that car again." The next day, Robert learned the truth. Thomas Brennan's ex-wife had been paying for the parking spot annually through an automatic bank transfer. When asked why, she'd told the university administration that it was what Thomas would have wanted and that she didn't want anyone else parking there. The university, not wanting to deal with the emotional complexity or potential legal issues, had simply let it continue. But that didn't explain what Robert had seen or what happened next. 4 nights after Robert discovered the obituary, the car disappeared. He was doing his rounds on level 3, deliberately avoiding looking at space 347 when he noticed something in his peripheral vision. The space was empty. Robert stopped and stared. The Buick was gone. After 16 years of never moving, space 347 was empty. He checked the exit records. No one had left the garage in the past 3 hours. He checked the security cameras. The footage showed the Buick sitting in its spot at 1:15 a.m. At 1:16 a.m., the camera glitched, just static for maybe 10 seconds. When the feed returned, the space was empty. Robert requested the footage from the garage exits. None of the cameras had recorded a 1987 Buick leaving the structure. The car had simply vanished. Robert quit 2 weeks later. He now works at a bank
and has no intention of ever working in a parking garage again. But sometimes, when he's lying in bed at night, he thinks about that car and wonders, where did it go? And more terrifying, who was driving?
Story 4. The Midnight Runner. Yuki had moved to Los Angeles from Japan to pursue her acting career. Like many aspiring actors, she needed a day job to pay the bills, and she found work as an attendant at a parking structure in West Hollywood. The garage served several nightclubs and restaurants, so it stayed busy until around 2 a.m. on weekends. Yuki worked Thursday through Monday from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. She liked the job. The people were usually in good spirits, going out for the evening, excited about their plans. Even the drunk ones were mostly harmless, just loud and overly friendly. The structure had 6 levels, open air on the sides, but covered with a concrete roof. Yuki's booth was on the ground floor, near the exit. After midnight, when things slowed down, she'd sometimes walk the levels to stretch her legs and make sure everything was secure. It was during one of these walks that she first saw the runner. It was a Thursday night, unusually quiet for some reason. Yuki had decided to walk up to level 6 and back down. She just reached level 4 when she heard footsteps above her, rapid, rhythmic footsteps like someone running. That wasn't unusual. People jogged in parking garages sometimes, especially well-lit ones like this. The open-air design meant fresh air circulated, making it less claustrophobic than enclosed structures. But as Yuki listened, something about the footsteps bothered her. They were too fast, too regular, like a machine rather than a person, and they didn't stop. Most joggers would run for a bit, then rest. These footsteps just continued, lap after lap. Yuki climbed the stairs to level 5 and listened. The footsteps were above her on level 6. She could track them as they ran around the perimeter. North side, east side, south side, west side, then around again. Curious, she climbed to level 6. The footsteps stopped. Yuki emerged onto the top level and looked around. There were about 20 cars parked there, scattered across the space. Plenty of shadows between them. "Hello?" she called out. "The garage closes at 3 a.m., just letting you know." No response. Yuki walked around the level, checking between cars. Nobody. She must have scared off whoever was running. She headed back to her booth and didn't think about it again until the next night when, at the same time, 12:47 a.m., she heard the footsteps again. Same pattern, same impossible speed. This time, Yuki grabbed her phone and went straight to level 6. She arrived just as the footsteps stopped. But this time, she noticed something she'd missed before. Wet footprints on the concrete. It had been perfectly dry all week, no rain, no humidity, yet there they were, clear as day, wet footprints in the shape of running shoes, forming a trail around the perimeter of level 6. Yuki followed them, her phone's flashlight illuminating each print. They were fresh, still glistening. The trail led to the eastern edge of the garage, where a waist-high concrete barrier prevented people from falling to the street below. The footprints stopped at the barrier. Yuki stepped back and noticed something else. The footprints didn't just stop, they were positioned as if someone had been standing on top of the barrier, and then jumped. Yuki returned to her booth and immediately Googled Parking Garage West Hollywood, death. The first result made her stomach drop. 3 years ago, a man named David Chen had thrown himself from the 6th level of this exact parking structure. He'd been a marathon runner, training for the Boston Marathon. According to the article, he'd been struggling with depression following a career-ending injury. The night he died, witnesses reported seeing him running laps on level 6 for over an hour before he jumped. It was Thursday night when he died, at 12:47 a.m. Yuki felt sick. She looked at the security monitor showing level 6, empty, no movement, but the timestamp read 12:47 a.m. As she watched, a figure appeared on the camera, a man in running clothes, moving at an inhuman speed around the perimeter of level 6. He ran lap after lap, his form perfect, his pace never slowing. Then he stopped at the eastern barrier, stood still for a moment, and vanished. The timestamp rolled over to 12:48 a.m. Every Thursday night after that, at exactly 12:47 a.m., Yuki would hear the footsteps. She'd see the figure on the security cameras, and sometimes, if she went up to level 6, she'd find wet footprints leading to the barrier. She asked her supervisor about it once. "Oh, the runner," he said casually. "Yeah, he's been here since before I started. Just ignore it. He doesn't bother anyone." "Doesn't bother anyone?" Yuki repeated incredulously. "There's a ghost running around the top level every Thursday night." Her supervisor shrugged. "Could be worse. At least he's just running. The garage on Sunset has a ghost that slashes tires. Count your blessings." Yuki learned to live with it. She'd stay in her booth during the midnight hour on Thursdays, keeping her eyes away from the level 6 monitor. But one Thursday, a young woman came running into Yuki's booth, tears streaming down her face. "There's a man on level 6, she gasped. "I think he's going to jump." Yuki checked her watch, 12:45 a.m. "Please," the woman begged, "we have to help him." Against her better judgment, Yuki grabbed her radio and followed the woman to level 6. They took the stairs, arriving breathless on the top level. The woman pointed to the eastern barrier. "He was right there. I swear I saw him." Yuki looked at her watch, 12:46 a.m. "You need to leave this level right now." "But now," Yuki said firmly. The woman, startled by Yuki's tone, nodded and headed for the stairs. Yuki stayed, checking her watch as the seconds ticked down. 12:46:50, 12:46:55, 12:46:60. The footsteps began. They started from the south, rapid and rhythmic, moving counterclockwise around the level. Yuki stood perfectly still, listening as they approached. The footsteps grew louder and louder until they were right beside her. She could feel the displacement of air, could smell sweat and pavement and something else, something like chlorine and fear. The footsteps passed her and continued their circuit. Yuki turned slowly and for the first time looked directly at the runner. He was translucent, like looking through colored glass, a young Asian man in running clothes, his face locked in an expression of intense concentration. His feet didn't quite touch the ground, and with each stride he left those wet footprints behind. He ran past her again and again, trapped in his eternal loop. On his 5th pass, he turned his head and looked directly at Yuki. His mouth moved, forming words she couldn't hear, but she could read his lips. "Help me stop." Then he reached the eastern barrier and vanished, and the footsteps fell silent. Yuki stood alone on level 6, her heart pounding. The wet footprints began to evaporate in the night air. The next day, Yuki contacted David Chen's family. She explained, as gently as she could, what she'd been experiencing. To her surprise, they weren't skeptical. "We've been hoping someone would see him," David's sister said. "We think he's still running because he never got to finish his race. He died 2 weeks before Boston. We've been wondering if we should hold some kind of ceremony, give him closure." The following Thursday, David's family came to the garage. At 12:45 a.m., they stood on level 6. Yuki, David's parents, his sister, and several of his running club friends. They brought a banner from the Boston Marathon, one David had been planning to run under. As 12:47 approached, they held it up between the columns, creating a finish line. The footsteps began right on schedule. David appeared, running his circuit, and when he came around toward the eastern barrier for what should have been his vanishing point, he stopped running. For a long moment, he stood there staring at the finish line. His transparent form seemed to solidify, becoming more real. Then he smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile, and he walked forward, passing under the banner. David's mother was crying. "You did it, baby," she whispered. "You finished your race." David turned to look at his family one last time. He nodded, bowed slightly in the traditional manner, and then he simply faded away, like morning mist in sunlight. The footsteps never returned.
Yuki still works at that garage. She walks up to level 6 sometimes on Thursday nights just to check. But the 6th floor stays quiet now, disturbed only by the sound of cars coming and going, and the living going about their lives. Sometimes healing the dead is as simple as letting them finish what they started. And so we reach the end of our descent into the parking garage depths, dear listeners. 4 stories, 4 souls trapped between the concrete and the darkness. The woman who couldn't let go of her betrayal. The forgotten dead seek acknowledgement beneath the earth. The man who couldn't leave the spot where he chose to end his pain. And the runner who just needed to cross one final finish line. Parking garages are liminal spaces, places of transition between where we've been and where we're going. Perhaps that's why spirits linger there, caught in their own transitions, their own in-betweens. The next time you walk to your car in a deserted garage, listen carefully. Those footsteps echoing behind you might not be your own. That figure you see in your peripheral vision might not be alive, and that cold spot you drive through might be colder than you think. I am Mr. Shadows, and these stories are my gift to you. If you've enjoyed our journey tonight, subscribe to this channel for more true horror stories from the darkness. Hit that notification bell, and you'll be the first to know when the shadows whisper again. Leave a comment below if you've had your own parking garage encounter. I read every single one, and perhaps your story will be featured in a future video. Until next time, dear listeners, remember, the shadows are always watching, the stories are always waiting, and some places never truly empty out. Sleep well, if you can. This has been Mr. Shadow's Stories. Good night.